Abracadabra. See? Nothing left.
Wow.
And now I'm going to make myself disappear.
Go ahead.
Bye-bye!
Up until 5 years ago, I couldn't even talk about this. When people would talk about it, I would actually leave the room and cry. And if we continue on the subject, I'll probably need a box of tissues or something.
I didn't know what schizophrenia was or anything, but I knew that something was not right.
Show me the mad rocky face, the mad face. Now show me the happy face. Now show me the sad face. Now show me the silly face.
I was asking questions, and then it was just like, oh no, Joe's got this thing. He's kind of, he's kind of a maniac.
Do you ever hear voices in your head, and you know that they're talking about you, but you can't hear what they're saying? And at the time, I was just like, nah, man.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm driving on 95 out by Freehold, and there was a red truck in front of me, and he just was cutting people off, and he just veered off of the road and into the woods, and it looked like he kind of flipped over or hit a tree or something, and there's no way that guy's alive.
When we went down to see where the accident was and look at his car, and it was evident that it was evident that his head went through the back window. And 20 years, do you believe this?
911, what's your emergency?
This naked guy just came out of nowhere, ran in front of my car. I almost hit him. 911, what's your emergency? This red truck just hit another car and dropped it.
He's gonna try to get out of it, and the second that he gets out of it, he's gonna try to kill himself again.
Where are you located?
I mean, I'm just sitting in traffic.
I remember thinking at the time, I didn't know if he was ever going to come back from that.
Something's going on there. Something's wrong with this guy.
I've been in the business now 35 years, 3 Grammy Awards, dozens of gold records, and out of all the artists that I've worked with, Joe's the most prolific of all of them.
County to 191. 191, please be advised we have additional information regarding a male individual walking around naked in the woods, 195 westbound, near mile marker 21. County, can you send additional units for traffic control east and west side of 195? 10-4. County, send the records for one overturned in the median and a second vehicle. 10-4, it's enumerator. 191. 230 will be en route to your location. Stand by for ETA. 191, will be arriving at your location in about 1 minute. 10-4, communicating suitable to the ETA.
Ready? Hi, my name's Joe. I'm a paranoid schizophrenic.
Can you state your name and your relationship to Joe?
I'm Joe's dad. My name is Joe.
I'm Michelle, Joey's mom.
Describe Joe in one word.
Awesome. Funny.
intense.
How would you describe Joe as a person?
I think Joe is gifted. I've been a musician all my life, and there's no way I could do what he does, or look at things or hear things the way he does.
I'd say when he makes up his mind to do something, it's always all in. It's never part way, halfway. It's all the way or nothing.
He's very passionate about the things he does.
I agree.
What was it like raising Joe?
How much time you got? He was a very active little boy growing up.
Very energetic.
Very, very energetic to the point where people said, shouldn't that kid be drugged?
Right.
Shouldn't that kid have Ritalin or something? And he was just when you step back and think about it, he was just a normal little boy. He just was very active.
But he was the favorite cousin because he always brought the comedy, the humor, the, mischief.
One thing that I can remember that is he was very, very perceptive as a kid. I used to work as a flavor chemist, and working as a flavor chemist is a combination of art and science, and you have to be able to taste things and see where they would be applicable. So on Bring Your Child to Work Day, I brought him with me, and he was, 6 or 7, and he was describing things the way no other 6 or 7-year-old would do. And he was right. It depends on what part of his life we're talking about. I mean, as
a little boy, he was, like I said, everybody's favorite. Because he was always happy, he was always, wanting to do sports and play baseball and soccer, and always the funny kid. He was up on all the shows, and he would love to do impressions of,
he loved to tease his cousins as well.
Right, and
yeah.
He was just, is Joey coming? Yeah, oh great, we're gonna have a good time, So that part, he was a fun kid, right?
And the teenage years was like, if it could be a DVD that you could just fast forward, They were difficult and challenging.
They were, very, very.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time before Joe was diagnosed that you feel that he may have been suffering from a medical condition such as paranoid schizophrenia?
In middle school, when his personality kind of changed, he just, I don't know how else to explain it except it was a change. And he was not as into the normal things he was before, and a little bit more disagreeable.
Yeah, as he went on,
the family went, and we thought, maybe he should see a counselor.
Yeah.
Around middle school age.
He became somewhat, I would say, angry, but we just attributed that to growing pains,
Yeah, right. Being a teen and being more...
He's a bratty kid just like any other teenager.
Right, yeah.
There was a point where I didn't know really what to do, and I had investigated sending him to a military school at one point because he just became uncontrollable as far as physical goes. He never raised his hands to me. I wanted to raise my hands to him, but I didn't. It became somewhat of a challenge physically as well, and then, he would back down when I would challenge him physically, thankfully. And, we were somewhat disturbed. We didn't know what the heck was wrong.
We definitely didn't like the direction he was going in, or the people he was hanging out with. And it was a little scary, and like you said before, we were attributing it to growing up. But it was a little bit beyond that, but I guess we were, I was anyway, trying to look and give him the benefit of the doubt.
Was there ever a time where Joe frightened you with any of his actions?
Yes, It was a blank stare, he was there, but he wasn't there, And, my daughter would try to say, well, he's hanging out with the wrong guys, They dabble in drugs and blah, blah, blah. And we were like, oh, well,
One thing I was quite frightened about is one thing that kind of frightened me is that he would spend hours on the front porch, pacing back and forth on his phone, saying the same things, telling the same story, and it would be like all night long. And I would turn to her and I would say, Michelle, is it possible that there's a person in the world who hasn't heard this story? Later comes to find out that there was nobody on the phone.
Right,
he was talking
right,
to imaginary things.
Yeah.
Which really, I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about that.
Thinking back on it now, I mean, you know, the way he looked, I mean, you know, the blank stares, he was emaciated. He was, you know, and I don't know why we didn't think, I don't know, like I said, I wanted to see the good, I wanted to be optimistic and say, oh, this is a phase. He's gonna, you know, go through this, but, you know, looking back on it, it was a lot more than that.
I was more suspicious.
Yeah, he was.
I was more
you were
suspicious.
rightly so, though.
Yeah, but I didn't know where it would go.
Right.
You know.
Maybe we were afraid to go there in our minds. Like,
maybe,
you know?
maybe.
So yeah, he was definitely changing and being, just acting very like weird and
distant and disconnected.
Right? Yeah, disconnected is a good
disconnected.
word. And when you looked at him, it was his eyes were very distant. It wasn't that warm look that you get, you know, when you usually look at Joey. That sparkle and
that
it was
funniness
just
was
a vacant.
You didn't see it anymore.
Right.
But Michelle would tell me during his recuperation, is that the right word? Yeah, whatever. Recuperation, that I know, even though he's looking through us,
yes,
I know he's still in
somewhere.
There. Yeah.
And I was waiting to see that glimpse of Joey, but there was a long time when
there were
he
years
was not
when we
there,
didn't see it.
and
Yeah.
it was scary.
If you remember the movie Poltergeist, he would do something quite similar. He would sit and watch a blank TV with nothing but snow on it. And, you know, I don't know if he thought that there was something there, but he was pretty intense looking at it.
Yeah, he definitely had some strange behavior back then.
Are you willing to rehash a special moment you and Joe shared together?
Well, I started coaching sports when my children were young. I don't even like sports, but I started coaching simply to spend time with my children. And I coached a number of things, many of which I really didn't like, one of them being wrestling. And I did judo when I was a youngster, so I had a little bit of knowledge about it. And we went to a tournament down in South Jersey somewhere, and Michelle took a broken old school bus and drove us all down there.
Because I was a school bus driver at the time, and they had a rec bus that was kind of out of condition, but I said, well, I think I can handle it. You know, we'll try making a run down with that.
Yeah, it came to the part where it was his turn to get up and wrestle. And he was crying. And he was really, really afraid and kind of like took off. So I found him and we were talking, and he put his hand on my shoulder. We made a beautiful, beautiful photograph that I'll cherish forever. And I said, look, Joey, you know what? You got to face your fears. You know, no matter how you do this, if you go out there and you win, I'm happy and proud. If you go out there and you don't win, but you do your best, I'm still happy and proud. So the time came, he went back up to the ring, and as soon as the referee went like that, he exploded on this kid. And he beat the hell out of him, you know. And of course, after he won the match, it came off, he's crying just, you know, as an emotional release. But it was a pretty cool moment.
Are you willing to rehash a special moment you and Joe shared together?
Oh, that was my favorite trip of my life. One of them, where he was invited out there by a producer, and he says, you think Angel, you know, I kind of don't want to go alone. You think Angel, you know, come with me? I said, no, you got to ask her. She was busy with school. And he's like, well, Ma, you know, could you, you know, take the trip? And I said, oh, I'd love to. I've always wanted to go to Hollywood. I'm a big movie buff. So Yeah, we went together, and it was just, well, he was so intense the whole time. So I was like, I was renting the car, I was doing the driving, and I was letting him have his intenseness and be Joey, because I know he's all in, And we had a great, what a week. I met people I never would have met if I had gone like by myself on a touristy trip. One thing, I talked him into going to Grauman's Chinese Theater because I always wanted to see that. And he says, okay, Ma, we got like 5 hours till our next thing, so, we'll go do your tourist thing and maybe I can take some footage of a, journal of my experience. He was doing that also. So it was just one of the best trips and best bonding mom and son trip of my life, and I cherish it always.
And that was 2010, right? I believe it was 2010.
So, yes,
Yeah.
yes, what a trip.
Because in 2007, when he was really starting to come around again, we went to Philadelphia just for like a family trip.
Right.
And he had his Rocky moment on the steps of the library. And I was standing behind him and tearing up, thinking to myself, if there's anybody that ever deserves this moment, it's him.
Can you tell us about Joe's accident?
Well, we lived in Ohio, and we raced from Ohio back to Jackson, New Jersey.
In one afternoon.
And found out that he had been in a very serious accident. There were stories all over the place that...
We got bits and pieces. We never really got... Somebody died. And
that he killed somebody.
There was a total wreck. They couldn't find his car. It was in the woods. And we had no idea. We were driving like with crazy thoughts.
And I traced the route where he went, and there were all things thrown out of his car that were, the mats, everything that was in the car was thrown out the window. And then I looked at the area where he actually drove before he became airborne, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't even look at the tire marks. When we went down to see where the accident was and look at his car, and it was evident that his head went to the back window. And 20 years, do you believe this? And he landed 18 inches from a huge pine. Had he been 18 inches over, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He would have been killed. It was very tough.
If you feel comfortable about sharing, are you willing to tell me what it was like when Joe was committed?
Oh gosh, that was devastatingly awful.
It was the most traumatic thing in my life. I had lost my dad as a teenager, and I came 18 inches away from losing my son. And we didn't know where to go or what to do. It was very traumatic. He could barely form sentences, Following the ambulance to the hospital, I told him to just go ahead, be respectful, and do whatever it is that they're telling you to do.
Well, before that, we were at the hospital. We had to kind of trick him into the car, and my husband and my daughter drove him to the hospital. He was restraining him in the back of the car, and me and my daughter were, doing the driving, and we pulled up to the emergency. We brought him in, and he went wild. He just went wild. Said things I never thought he'd say, just like a wild man. And they shot him with some tranquilizer.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we have to bring him down to the psych ward, whatever it is, and we're gonna have to put him in a straitjacket. Do you want to talk to him? And I was like, oh God, Joe, don't. And he says, no. He says, I'm going to tell him what's going to happen because he's going to be scared out of his mind. And I thought, oh, is that the right thing? And he says, yes, I'm going to go tell him what they're going to do and that we will be following the ambulance right behind so he, doesn't feel like he's being abandoned. So in retrospect, that was the right thing to do, because then when we got there, we were able to see him and go in there with him, so he knew we were there. I mean, we couldn't be physically with him, but at least he knew we were there. So
up until 5 years ago, I couldn't even talk about this.
that's true.
When people would talk about it, I would actually leave the room and cry. And if we continue on the subject, I'll probably need a box of tissues or something. But, it was very, very difficult to come to terms with. I kept reliving that moment in our lives saying, gee, why didn't we see this? What did we do wrong? Why didn't we notice something was dreadfully wrong?
He couldn't even think of the accident with the car. And then I would say, well, just look at him now. He's alive. He's not, he was, I just can't get it out of my mind. I said, well, I just think of him how he is now, and everything is well, and that's how I cope with it,
What amazes you about Joe, and what do you admire about him?
He has passed every expectation I ever thought that he would achieve. I mean, we thought that he would live with us for the rest of our lives because he would be like, kind of mentally insufficient.
Right.
But it was so independent, so confident now. He met the most marvelous, wonderful girl that I think God sent her from heaven. Because
we love her dearly.
They're just freaking frack, Arm & Hammer, pork and beans. I mean, the two of them together. And he just passed all of my expectations.
Me too.
I thought.
Me too. When he first came to live with us in Ohio, I talked my boss into giving him a chance to have a job in our industry. And that was kind of unheard of then, but because she had a son who also suffered from some mental illness, she gave him a chance, and he did amazing. He's still in the business 20-something years later, and we worked together side by side for 20 years. As far as work goes, he's incredibly dedicated. He's very, very knowledgeable about the things he does. Joey and I learn things the same way. We learn by doing, as opposed to by reading it from books. And he has learned by doing a lot of the flavor industry. He's surpassed whatever I would have planned for him. As far as music goes, he's, again, gifted.
Come on, you could say he's better than you.
I know he's better than me. Should I tell the story? Okay, so I learned music in a classical fashion from music theory, yada, yada, yada. Joey doesn't learn music that way.
In his head.
I asked him, why don't you learn so that when I say play a D chord, you know what I'm talking about? So, he was playing guitar, he was playing my guitar, and he learns by doing, and I asked him, why don't you take lessons of some sort, or let me teach you what the notes are and the scales? And he says, I don't want to learn that because it would thwart his creativity. And watching him play, I could understand why he thought that. So I thought we were going to have this marvelous dad-son moment. One day I walked into his room, and he was asking me to figure out a Rage Against the Machine song. This was 1992, thereabouts. And I was trying to figure it out. My guitar was on his bed, and I had my other guitar, and I picked up my guitar, and I started playing What Else? The intro to Stairway to Heaven. And he looks at me, and I said, oh, this is it. He says, Dad, how did you ever have a band? You suck. That was the one and only time we ever tried to play together. You remember that?
Yeah, I was a jerk.
Well, that's all right.
But it was funny.
Can you state your name and your relationship to Joe?
I'm Angela, and I'm Joey's sister.
Describe Joe in one word.
Weird. Sorry.
How would you describe Joe as a person?
He's really kind and goofy and funny. Like unpredictable, but in a really predictable way. Family oriented. It's really nice. It's really nice.
What was it like growing up with Joe?
He was, no offense. I guess like every sibling relationship, like many sibling relationships, we butted heads a lot as kids. But now we're really close. But when we were little, he used to tease the shit out of me. Like constantly, like playing with him was fun, but then it could like take a dark turn and be not fun anymore. Okay, and it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know that, I can't say that he was doing it to be mean, but I feel like he was doing it to amuse himself and at the same time like push buttons. Like he was a real button pusher. And he would like tease me to the point where he would like make me cry and stuff. And I'd be like, ah, Joey! And then, but then we'd go back and play together the next day. And then like looking back on it, how, it's 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's hilarious. It was hilarious and funny. Like never hated him, but I didn't want to play with him or hang out with him because I knew he was going to make me cry. It's like a weird relationship, but it's not like that at all anymore. He would tease me to such an extent where I'd be like, stop it, no, stop it, no, stop it, no. And he'd keep going. And he knew he hit a button with that one. And once he would hit that button, he would stick on that button and literally chase me around the house. And to get away from him, I had nowhere to go. And so I would lock myself in the bathroom. And he would be screaming through the bathroom door, whatever, to get me to scream back. And I would be screaming back. And that's when he would hit record on these little like $12 cassette recorders that we had. And then he would play it back. He would play it back for my friends. He would play it back for me. Sometimes I would be on the phone. And he would pick up the other line and play it into the phone.
Was there ever a time before Joe was diagnosed that you feel that he may have been suffering from a medical condition such as paranoid schizophrenia?
No question. So like when we were teenagers, when I guess I was like in grade 11 and 12, and Joey was in when Joey was in grades 9, 10, 11, I knew something was wrong. He was off. He was real off. And I would say stuff to my parents sometimes, and they'd be like, no, you guys just don't get along, or no, it's just like sibling thing. I'd be like, no, like he's like something's not right with him. And it was frustrating because like I was scared. I was scared and nervous. Like I didn't know what schizophrenia was or anything, but I knew that something was not right. Like sometimes I would come home late at night from being out with my friends, and I would see him in his bedroom, like sitting straight up in the bed, kind of just like staring. I remember vividly one time where I got home and I looked into your room and I was like, he's on acid right now. Is he on acid? And you weren't at all. And like, yeah, I knew something was up.
Was there ever a time where Joe frightened you with any of his actions?
I was frightened, yeah, a bunch of times. I was frightened for a lot of different reasons. Like when I was in the house and like I kind of felt like something was up, I was most concerned, like I thought he was gonna hurt himself by accident. And then there were times when I thought he was gonna hurt himself on purpose. There were times when I feared for my parents, like I didn't know if he would harm them. And there were times that I feared for myself, that I didn't know that he would come at me. One time, there was a little incident, and we kind of went at each other. And after that, I was like, I'm staying away. I'm done right now. Like something's not right, and something bad is gonna happen. And I remember, I told my parents, I was like, something bad is gonna happen. Something really bad is gonna happen, and something has to be done. Well, who knew in that moment? And whenever he was around, I would not be around after that. And that's when I really started fearing for my parents too, for their safety. There were other instances where toward the end of his high school career, when I was in college, we went out to several parties together, and we partied differently. We ran with some of the same kids, but like when I would see how reckless he was, like we were all being reckless because high school kids and college kids are indestructible and reckless by nature, but he was on a whole nother level, and I was like, it's just like, he needs help. He needs help. So.
Can you tell us about Joe's accident?
I feel like I was in my apartment in Trenton. I can't remember who called me. I feel like I can't remember who called me. I feel like it was either Dad or it was our Uncle Joe. Because my Uncle Joe lived in Jackson at the time, nearish by, and I heard all I knew. Oh no! My parents were still in Ohio when it happened, and so when I heard, I immediately drove out to my uncle's house, and we were just trying to figure out like what was going on or what had happened. And I knew it was bad, that he got taken away, and that he was going to, I don't remember the name of the place, but my parents were driving out immediately, and I don't know, I had this feeling. I was like, he tried to kill himself. That's what this is right now. This is not an accident. And I just remember I didn't sleep for like a long time, like days. And just talking to my parents a lot, and stuff was going on. Like stuff got real. It was so long ago. I can't, like, now it's so long ago that it's the detail, which is nice that the details are so fuzzy that you don't gotta like relive that. But he went to the tattoo shop, he went to his tattoo artist, and he gave him like a ton of his stuff and money and stuff. He gave him a bunch of money, and immediately I was like, he's gonna do something. And you came up to see me, and you told me how much you miss me, and how like all like weird stuff that, well, not weird for you, because weird for him because he didn't do that. And then it was like within days the accident happened. I was like, he's trying to kill himself. He was wild and he was not there. It was like he was looking through you, and it was up.
If you feel comfortable about sharing, are you willing to tell me what it was like when Joe was committed?
Yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't directly involved in all that. Like, my parents were directly involved in this, and I was just on the phone with everybody all the time. And when he was committed, I was in my uncle's kitchen, sitting at the table. having a piece of toast at the table, waiting for phone calls. It was like, I feel like it was late at night that it happened. And I remember thinking, like, I know this, I could just imagine my dad sitting here. Did Dad cry? Did he cry? Yeah, he's very, yeah. When Joey was committed, I was grateful, I was thankful, and I was happy that he was committed. I was like, he can't hurt himself now. I was like, thank God he's being committed. And I hope he's in a straitjacket, and I hope he's in a padded room, and he's gonna get help now, and finally my parents will see. Like, honestly, it was a happy moment for me when he was committed, because I knew that he couldn't kill himself immediately at that point. Because I knew that if he was released, he was gonna kill himself. And it was a relief when he was committed, because now I knew that it was, my parents were very naive, and they refused, they're just naive people. And I guess it's hard when it's your own child. And they didn't want to think that anything was wrong, or that this could happen, or whatever. Or, I don't know if they didn't want to think it, or if they just couldn't. I don't know what the case was, but I know that it was a shock for them. But when this happened, I was not shocked, and I was relieved. And I felt like when he was committed, that was a huge turning point. And I knew that, like, he was so far gone, like, he was really far gone, that like totally, like, psychotic nuts. Like, I knew that it was gonna take a while for, if anything good, like, something is wrong with this kid, and he's gonna be examined, and he's gonna be looked at, and there's no way they're not gonna find something. And then I remember having all these conversations with my parents, like, I don't know, it's, you know, maybe he's bipolar. I'm like, he's more than bipolar. And then, well, he was diagnosed with this, and they're giving him medication. I was like, he's not taking the medication. He's like cheeking it and like spitting it out. And I was like, don't underestimate him. He's gonna know how to play the game. And I was like, he's entirely paranoid, and, you know, like, just watch him, because he's gonna try to get out of it. And the second that he gets out of it, he's gonna try to kill himself again. And it's funny, because my parents always say that I'm such a downer, or that I'm such a pessimist, or that like I'm always so dark. My mind always goes to the darkest places first. But good for me, because I wasn't giving anybody any benefits of any doubts. So I was happy when he got committed.
Are you willing to rehash a special moment you and Joe shared together?
Everything now, whenever I see him with my kids, it's like they adore him and they love him. And ever since this pandemic thing was been, like, we all, my whole family, we miss him and Jess so much. Yeah, every time, my son especially, like, my daughter's a little prickly. She's got a prickly personality, but like, it took her a long time to warm up to him. But now, like, she actually, instead of just like making eyes at him sometimes, like, she conversates with Joey. She asks about him. Sometimes she's like, Mommy, can I call him? And that. But my son looks up to him so much, and like, at any time I see him with my kids, it's awesome.
What amazes you about Joe, and what do you admire about him?
That he's so functional now. That for whatever reason, he made a choice to deal with it. And to, because like so many other people with this illness or any other illness, they'll just be like, oh, this is how I am. Or like somebody else with this illness will be like, nothing is wrong with me. But something made him see that he was suffering, and he accepted that he had it, and he accepted that that he had to do stuff to get well, like, not better, you can't be cured from it or anything, but to I don't know, accept the hand he was dealt and play that hand that he was dealt. And you would never know, like, that anything was different about Joey. Like, he just seems like a normal person. But he lives with this illness, and he's fine, and he's totally fine, and he knows how to manage it, and he knows how to live with it, and He knows when things are good or wrong. He has a support system too, and he relies on his support system, his family and friends and doctors and stuff, and he does what he's supposed to do.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys! We love you!
Love you.
Can you state your name and your relationship to Joe?
My name's Eric. I've been friends with Joe since I've been like 10 years old. He was one of my first friends when I moved to New Jersey.
Describe Joe in one word.
One word? That's a tough one. One word for him? Interesting. And even that's an understatement. He's a complex guy.
How would you describe Joe as a person?
Oh, he's great. Like I said, I've known him forever. Ever since I've known him, we've always gotten along. We have an interesting sense of humor, so we always saw eye to eye. I mean, he's had his issues back in the day. He was crazy for a while there, but he's always been fantastic to me. You know, we've always been close friends.
What was it like growing up with Joe?
Well, he's older than me, obviously. So at like 10 years old, you know, that's a, big gap, 10 and 13. So when I moved there, he was one of my first friends, but I also like looked up to him, you know. He actually is the one that like really got me into music. You know, moving to Jackson from New York, there wasn't really like, New York is a very different place, especially back then before the internet. And then when I moved out there, I was introduced to all kinds of music. So he opened my mind to, what I love to do today. So, I mean, that's why I play music today.
Was there ever a time before Joe was diagnosed that you feel that he may have been suffering from a medical condition such as paranoid schizophrenia?
At the time, no. I was a kid then, Now that I'm an adult looking back, you can there were some things. I remember a few things in particular that now that I look back at them, I'm like, holy red flags type of thing. But yeah, then we're all being crazy kids. Everyone's a little crazy, you know what I mean? I didn't really think that way about him.
Was there ever a time where Joe frightened you with any of his actions?
Yeah, so that's probably this particular story is probably the biggest red flag. I feel like an idiot for not, saying it. But this was right before his episode, maybe a month or 2 or 3. It was right before that, I remember that. And he called me up. This is before cell phones, so you're calling each other's houses, that kind of thing. He called me up, to confirm practice. I was like, yeah, we're good for practice. And then he asked me this question. He was like, he goes, hey, do you ever hear voices in your head and you know that they're talking about you, but you can't hear what they're saying? And at the time I was just like, nah, man. And I didn't even think twice of it. I was 16, Now that I'm 36, it's like, Jesus Christ, I should have did something about that, And yeah, that was I still think about that. It was a crazy conversation. He'd hit himself, he'd punch the dashboard, he'd turn the music up real loud, start yelling, get himself pumped. It was, again, going back to the word interesting to describe him in one word. But I get it, we're gonna play a show. He's trying to get in the mood. We got a little crazy sometimes, but not like crazy. We just had fun, you know what I mean? We played some music, made some jokes, He was working at an installation place. Yeah, installation, yeah, that's it. And he'd come over, and he's always skinny, but he was like skinnier then, so he's just like bones. And he'd come over, and we'd have practice, like, can I shower in your pool? I was like, I have a shower like inside. You could just use that one. He's like, I'll just hop in the pool. And he would just hop in the pool. And it was just the craziest thing. It was just, all right, I guess we're practicing now. After he hopped. It was just funny. Again, looking back now, it's like, all right, there's some red flags. It wasn't, when it comes to crazy experiences with him, it wasn't as much experiences as it was just like ideas and thoughts. you know, and how he would explain to me how he saw certain things. Like, I would say that was like, okay, a little crazier than, yeah, again, we're going back to when we were kids. All kids are doing crazy stuff, and, you know, I was one of them. So I didn't really, as far as activities go, that wasn't too crazy, but like listening to some of the things that he thought and just how he saw certain things was, you know, again, looking back, it's a red flag, you know. He had this whole thing with this number 3 and how it was all tied into everything, and he would, there's 3 of this, 3 of that, and it would times this by that, it's 3, and then like he whipped out this chart that he showed me that was like, it's hard to explain, almost like a, it kind of looked like a hopscotch board. It would get wider in certain spots and get narrower, and it was all numbers and color coded, right, if I believe so. And he showed that to me one day. I'm like, cool, man, you know, I don't know what he's talking about, you know, I was just being a good friend, just kind of, yeah, awesome. But yeah, again, looking back, it was something that would, yeah, it was worrisome. Now, I don't know. Yeah, I remember a time where he told me about a story when he was pulled over by a cop. And he pulled over, hopped out of the truck, took his shirt off, and approached the cop. And I guess, I mean, he was still around, so he didn't get arrested, obviously. I don't know how that went from there, but I remember thinking that was, you know, just take your shirt off, covered in tattoos, and approach a cop when he pulls you over. That was a red flag, you know? And just run red lights. Who runs red lights? And it's like, oh, I'll be fine. No one does that. Probably about a month or 2 before his episode, he started, I remember he went to his tattoo artist, I believe. He gave him his dirty laundry, stabbed himself in the arm and said something to him. And then he told me this story about how, like, again, this is like right before his episode. This is probably like a week or 2 before his episode. He just told me about how he's like, I don't stop for red lights no more. He's like, no one's gonna hit me. I got it all figured out, kind of thing. He didn't really say it in those exact words, but that was insinuated.
Can you tell us about Joe's accident?
I don't remember exactly where I was. I believe I got this call from our old drummer, I believe. And then we went to go see him in the hospital. And I didn't know the details of the accident at the time. And then we went to go see him, and he just like wasn't in his right frame of mind. You know, he was, again, looking back now, he was slipping towards the end, right before the episode, but then once I seen him in the hospital, after that, he was not. He was like on a different, I remember that. It was like, it was weird to see someone there, you know, but not really there. I've never really seen that before. And, you know, at 16 years old, and even today, like, I love to play music. It's just, that's what I love to do. So, like, that was like my world, you know? So, like, when that happened, not only was I concerned for my friend, but, like, everything we worked for and everything we're, you know, going, you know, trying to accomplish I knew that was all up in the air, and I just didn't know, you know, up from down. It sucked, you know, but, you know, he's good now, thank God. But I was young, you know. I find comfort in, like, knowing that I was young and I didn't really know much, you know. So it sucked. It sucked to see someone just, like, fall apart like that, you know. It sucked. I looked up to him, you know. He's like an older brother type, you know. So who am I to tell him? You know what I'm saying? I didn't think I was in a position to. I didn't really understand the weight of everything at the time. But I just wish I could, you know, have said something or at least talk to his parents, you know. Gave him the heads up. Was like, listen, I love this kid. He's slipping, you know. It sucked. Like the last half year it sucked. You know, when you're looking at a crazy person, the lights are on, no one's home. That's what it was. It was. And I remember our drummer at the time. He was just like, oh, well, and I'm like, nah, man, this isn't right. I've never seen him like this. It's yeah, it was rough.
If you feel comfortable about sharing, are you willing to tell me what it was like when Joe was committed?
I remember when we showed up, again, I was a kid at the time, I wasn't driving. So I was driven there by our drummer. And we went in there and I saw his parents immediately. They were in the hallway and they were kind of a mess, you know what I mean? And it was just rough. He wasn't, like, again, he just wasn't there. And I didn't know, I remember thinking at that time, I didn't know if he was ever gonna come back from that, you know, like mentally. Because I know once you lose certain things, you know, mentally, there's no coming back sometimes. So I worried about that. And I only visited him the one time. Yeah, it was just, it wasn't cool. To be honest, there was a sense of relief in a way, because after that episode, things kind of came together. You know, the red flags started piling up. You put them together, you're like, oh yeah, there's something there. So I was just happy that he was alive and getting help that he needed, you know. And then I remember when he moved with his parents, he moved to Ohio, and he came back and he was a little better. He was heavily medicated, but definitely mentally better. And then he came back like a year after that, I believe, and he was much better. And then I saw him probably about a year after that, and he was and it just got better and better. And just as a friend, you know, I was just so happy. You know, we were always close, and he would always call me. You know, we would talk on the phone all the time, and it was good to hear from him, because you could hear in his voice that he was so much in such a better place mentally, and with his parents. Because before the whole episode, he was living here in New Jersey by himself, so he wasn't only struggling mentally, but he was struggling financially, and, you know, driving like crazy back and forth to work, and, you know, practice wasn't where we practiced. It wasn't close to where he lived, so he was constantly traveling and all this. And it was good to hear from him, you know, in a good place, you know, healthy. You could hear it in his voice, you know. He was doing much better.
Are you willing to rehash a special moment you and Joe shared together?
Oh, a ton. Like I said, I don't know if I've never really said this to him, but there was way more good times than bad, you know. Again, we're both our sense of humor is we're a little out there, so we always got along on that level. So even when we butted heads, or, you know, there's any sort of craziness, like, we'd always, you know, he's one of my best friends, like, to this day, you know. I love this guy.
What amazes you about Joe, and what do you admire about him?
He's laser focused. He's got a drive to him that I wish I had, you know, to be honest, you know. Yeah, he gets ideas in his head. He gets his focused on a point, and he gets there, you know. I do that too, but slower. He gets there. He kind of puts his head down and knocks it out in like 2-3 weeks. Every time I see him, it's like, I did 50 more songs, and it's amazing. Check them out, and they're fantastic. So it's like, Jesus, Joe, this guy's he doesn't stop. He just keeps going. It's crazy.
I think he's gifted. He's kind of like you know, somebody who sees things differently than everybody else sees it. And I've been a musician all my life, and there's no way that I could possibly do what he does.
I think he is, when he puts his mind to do something, he's all in. He doesn't do it halfway, part way. He does it to the max. So he can be intense when, you know, he puts his mind to it. And he's a very good-hearted boy.
Yeah, he is. He's a good guy.
He's really kind and goofy and funny. Like, unpredictable, but in a really predictable way. Family-oriented. It's really nice. It's really nice.
And I said, look, Joey, you know what? You got to face your fears. You know, no matter how you do this, if you go out there and you win, I'm happy and proud. If you go out there and you don't win, but you do your best, I'm still happy and proud.